Dr. Angel Acosta, the chair of the Acosta Institute. I'm just so excited to be here with Sisters Maria Tan and Drisana McDaniel. This is our last episode for season one of Capacity Building with the Acosta Institute. I just want to begin by sharing gratitude for you, Maria, for leading the way with the production of this podcast. Gratitude for you, Drisana, for being such a powerful thought partner, and just gratitude for all of our guests who participated asynchronously through our Healing Centered Education International Conference that specifically was themed around capacity building. And we decided to integrate some of those interviews in this season. And wow, team, like we did a lot. We did a lot. Wow, we explored capacity building in the context of artificial intelligence. We explored capacity building as kind of being counterintuitive. We explored capacity building in the context of building out the Acosta Institute, and then also kind of had that conversation around building healing centered learning environments, and one around business as well. So just wow, we did it. Look at us. Look at us. How are you all feeling at this point?
Feeling proud, feeling really proud. Um, I think what my favorite thing about this show is that we get to spend time together just chopping it up. That's my favorite thing about this show.
Yeah, same. We're so busy and yeah, it's a really great time for us to be able to sort of integrate all of the things that we are doing and thinking about and experimenting with, if you will, also in this conversation. Yeah, it's really energizing. It's been really energizing.
I'm reminded of a quote that Drew mentioned a few years ago. We were in the throes of some kind of planning, and she was talking about how you got to speak in rough draft. Uh, Speaking in rough draft. I thought it was a beautiful expression of just kind of like really leaning into not having a finished product in terms of what you're trying to communicate or what you're trying to ideate or brainstorm. And I feel like we this 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 season was an example of acting in rough draft, where just like, I mean, how many people want to produce a podcast, right? And they have the idea, right? But they get caught up. I don't have the right mic. I don't have the right camera. I haven't organized thematically the structure of it. I haven't reached out to guests. And I just want to acknowledge how we just jumped right in and put this out there. I want to begin by just gently and briefly acknowledging some of the conversations that came before this episode, um, that had some of the recorded pre-recorded conversations from our conference last December. The theme of the international conference was capacity building in times of change. And we had people like Tim LeBrecq, Reverend Angel Killer William, Amy Elizabeth Fox, Anu Gupta, Wakanji Hoffman, Zara King, Maggie Jackson, Darlene Cortadero, and Renee Lertzman as well. So just want to thank all of them, just appreciating all of them for just their wisdom, and encourage everybody who hasn't listened to those interviews, check them out. Check them out. They were just so, so, so powerful. I was struck by just a conversation with Tim around his work with the House of Beautiful Business and trying to this idea of making business more beautiful. And what does it mean to have rigorous conversations with in the world of business that really moves the needle in creating a more human-centered workplace. And then Amy Elizabeth Fox with her work at Mobius Leadership Institute, just powerful. I mean, the work she's doing, taking executives through like a healing journey. Ooh, that's profound. And of course, the OG herself, Reverend Angel Kiddo Williams, like her. her invitation uh, to think about silence and the power of stilling ourselves in order to build our capacities is pretty profound. So just wanted to acknowledge some of those folks. Anything coming up for you on your end in regards to any of those interviews?
I mean, yes. What came up for me was how connected the Institute is to so many brilliant human beings. I was just really kind of blown away at how that happens. I mean, it's not like years ago where I used to really just kind of like go Google-eyed and I cannot believe that this is happening. I'm not googly-eyed anymore, but I am still there is such a spirit of awe I have, I think it just listening to the conversations and, it's the range, right? So it's the breadth and the depth of, like, what is being engaged, it still floors me. And I've always been that person, though, who just wants to go to a conference and listen to people, so there's that. It's just now kind of being a part of, like, organizing the conference. Um, but I will tell you also, Angel, I don't know if this isn't the question you're asking necessarily, but I am always floored at hearing you speak with so many different people,
Mhm.
so in such a way that, um, really makes the information relatable. You're very, very good at that. I'm always kind of floored by that. It doesn't matter who it is. And so, yeah, just really, really beautiful. The wider range of people, like I said, the difference in expertise, but also how it's all very much connected to this overarching theme of capacity building and relationship.
Yeah. Um, I totally agree with that last part, Drew. Just always hearing Angel talk, it's like a master class, and then you put someone else in the room with him. I don't even know what to call it. um, but yeah, what also amazes me is how we're able to take these concepts such as capacity building and present it in such a way that other people in the field can then sort of like wrap their work around it or see where their work um, is in parallel to that or how it applies to that. So listening to the conversations like Maggie's, for example, was so clearly about the the building the capacity to be with uncertainty and how that's a skill. Like being with uncertainty is a skill that we need to develop and practice. And I'm also thinking of Darlene's conversation where capacity building from her perspective is really this capacity to like be more creative and how that's healing and how um cultivating skills like being softer and gentler and kinder very much builds our capacity as well to be in these times and with all of the tragedies that we see um and then I'm also thinking lastly about Renee's conversation, which Drew, I think you and Renee would have such an amazing conversation about like the alchemy of now and being with what is. Um, she talked very much about the ability to growing your capacity to be with like hard, unwanted truths. So
Mhm.
very alchemy of now, like being with what is and seeing what arises from that skill of being with, like, the difficult, ugly truths.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I love how we can, again, like, bring these concepts into the field and then people, like, pour into it, and then it expands what we know about the concept, and it's our research in a way.
Maria, when you were talking about concepts, taking a concept like capacity building and um I don't know, presenting it in such a way that it becomes relatable, like everyone can kind of like think with it. Um, I will say that Dr. Sarah King, of course, it blew me away to think about um, the development of a collective healing consciousness as a type of capacity, right? Like, like that's huge,
Mhm.
you know. And especially when I think about this time when we see such simplicity, such simple thinking, sort of constantly lifted up all over, the media and whatnot, when we hear things like this, I'm just blown away at the idea that this is actually a concept now, which is also been a reflection of our deepest yearnings. When Gupta talked about radical empathy, like radical empathy, to conceive of that as a concept for capacity building, like I think there are some people who, again, when I'm thinking about this time and sort of the names that we hear often in the media, if you said something like radical empathy, how they might just blank stare, like, what? Empathy? Radical empathy? That's a capacity? And just so how amazing it is that we are having these very important conversations that aren't just radical, but also reflect what people are really seeking. And then the last but not least was Wangaji Hoffman and the idea of like AI mothering. Like I was just, my the womanist in me was like, what did you just say? And so just even be able to have a whole conversation about that, like again, like, yeah, we really, we're really inside of this idea in a very profound way.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's been really beautiful. I'm struck by what Maria said around, taking some of these ideas and these conversations and putting them in the field, putting them in the field. Um, I kind of was struck by that when you said that, Maria. In a playful way, I kind of asked myself, where is the field? You know, well, I noticed the gesture you made, putting it in the field, and my assumption in you suggesting that the field is somewhere out there, the field is somewhere outside of you, and so I'm just being playful here around. Um, what if the field is not out there? I think part of the way we've been moving is the field is right here, and in fact, the field is in here. And so I'm just intrigued and thinking about the ways that the field grows through moves like that, like people intentionally putting ideas out there and the field grows. And then also people building the field in themselves and gradually and organically generating enough attention that then the field grows. Uh, so just kind of a random thought there that I had. Um, but maybe there's a connection there with how capacity building is counterintuitive. Maybe the way we build fields needs to shift a little bit. Um, is there something there around building fields in different ways? And how do podcasts and community oriented and co-creative ways of knowledge sharing shift? Because you could argue, I think, that the way we've treated capacity building, and I use that language from film treatment treats in film studies or in film production, you you would say, oh, the director treated the production process a certain way. Um, so I feel like the way you've treated this process, Maria, has been really significant. The way you've treated this work, Drew, is really significant. The way I've treated it, and we've laid out literally a whole season with more than 12, 15 episodes. Um, like I'm just blown away by how that builds a field.
There was a lot that came up for me as you were saying that. One that, of course, the field is it's like interstitial, right? It's interstitial. In reality, it's interstitial. But I think what you're pointing to is the way we think about it is like external, right? So we're moving and being very much in the field and we're creating the field, but there's like a shift. You're like welcoming a shift about the way we think about it. Um, which I think is significant. And then as you were naming like all of these different aspects of the field going through these evolutions and how we're each tending to the field in different ways, which contributes to that evolution of
Mhm.
the field.
I think you should definitely um, take a note of your comment around the field being interstitial because, yeah, that's really deep. And especially since we are really close to the scholar who actually coined that term, or at least invented the actual organ, the interstitium, Dr. Neil Thies from NYU, um, who we'll be meeting him at a poly opportunity. Um, but yeah, yeah. So if you haven't heard, there's been a new organ that has been discovered by Dr. Neil Thies called the interstitium, which is kind of in between fascia and muscle, and it's pervasive too. Um, so yeah, just a just a thought there. But
One thing I think that's an interesting feature of the field too, that you've that it's coming to me in this moment, but that you've been saying for a while is, for an example, for me, you've been encouraging me to like tap back into my science background, right? I have a background in chemistry. I have a degree in chemistry. I was a science teacher. And so although you've just placed that seed in the field and I'm not even actively, doing that, but you've planted a seed there that is now starting to grow. And I think that that happens so much in our work. Like we'll just drop these ideas in the field and then they become these seeds that blossom into, something beautifully emergent that we can't tell at the beginning.
yeah, yeah, you're a bona fide scientist, and we gotta acknowledge that. And Drew is also in her journey of finishing her doctorate, so she's budding as a scientist as well. And I'm just kind of struck by there was this one book we read in my doctoral program, my first year, and first year is the hardest year because you're just like, oh, the volume of reading that you have to do, just the volume of writing. And I remember just reading so much and just having certain things just hit. There was this one quote about the purpose of doctoral education and the purpose of the process of it. And at the end of the day, what the scholar said that it's about belonging and becoming, right? So you're becoming the scholar that can ideally at some point identify a gap in the literature and through that gap make original contribution to the field. But then you're also belonging. You're belonging to a tapestry of other scholars who've come before, right? And that's where your citation, your lit review comes into. So the art really is to maintain that balance of um, belonging to a really rich tradition of thinking, across different frameworks, methodologies, disciplines, but then also like becoming. And so as you were talking about, you know, your 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 science background and Drew's uh, soon to be Dr. McDaniel, um, I think we kind of embody that in the institute. This tension between becoming and belonging, and that dynamic kind of interplay there. And lastly, I mean, what better way to even think about capacity and capacity building than that productive tension between becoming and belonging?
And that kind of stuff happens all the time. Like, what just happened is what happens all the time. I as soon as Maria said interstitial, I was like, "We about to go here." Um, and then you're like, "Well, actually, interstitial is." I mean, and that's exactly how it is. But you've also mentioned, I feel like you've also mentioned the generative social field. I think that's related too. I think it's all very much related. I think this is all very like metaphysical, philosophical, down to the somatic if we're talking about organs. But one of the things that occurs to me is like before I met you, Angel, or knew anything about Acosta, when I went to that one call at the Garrison, one of the things on my I spent a lot of time working on sort of like organizing my thoughts around how I want to work in the world. And one of the things that I knew was one of my core values is this idea of radical interconnectedness. And so it's just very interesting to me, even this idea of belonging and becoming, like when I think about the community that we are part of and the generative social field that we belong to, that it really is grounded in this idea of radical interconnect. And I was like, if we were to map it all, we would eventually find all of ourselves connected to each other somehow. I don't know if it's the 6 degrees of separation necessarily, but all of our ideas, like as much as we're to come up with an original idea, yeah, all of our ideas really come from this lovely field that we're inside of and belong to and contributing to. So it's like we're looking for the new idea and the new knowledge, and at the same time, there is no new. Like that's how when we end up in the company of the people that we belong in community with, we're like, oh, you too. Oh yeah, that's right. And I think that that's a part of this too. It feels very like it can be trusted. It's this process of trust and yeah, becoming and excavating and collaborating and, there's all this percolating that's happening all the time. I think that that is like really like the essence of what we're inside of,
Mm.
what we're doing.
Yeah, really quickly when the theme of capacity building came through for us as an organizing kind of theme last year for our conference and for some of this work and some of the other work that we're going to be doing, it just felt right. It felt right. And but you know how sometimes things feel unfinished. Like it felt right, but not complete. Like it was, some themes we've explored, we've played with them in the public, and then they have their phase, and then we kind of like set them aside for a little bit. This one just feels like there's just so much more that it can give us. And what it hit me was I was thinking about alchemy of now, right, as a framework. Maria also had a really powerful framework and has a powerful framework originally designed for educators, thriving educator model that has a really robust way of supporting educators. And you look at the archaeology of self. You look at most of the frameworks that we've given air and time within the institute, like the Bridge to Thriving model for Kia. They're all capacity building frameworks. They're all capacity building frameworks. So I'm just struck by how capacity building, as that point that I made maybe earlier in the season, begets capacity. And one day, Drew, there's so many. I have a map of all these concepts that I came across in my doctoral journey. So just advice for you. I'm sure there are concepts that we've never even heard that right? That you just like, oh, I have this like big map of all these different concepts that I came across that I just never like really re-explored or touched. But I wanted to bring one up that I think you and I may have talked about, this idea of self-authoring as a really powerful way of conceiving of agency. Uh, and you know what the concept of self-authoring means is that obviously we author ourselves into existence, like, and we've done this with this podcast. Like we were authoring ourselves into, in fact, that gesture you saw Maria make earlier around like putting this in the field, that was a self-authoring gesture. We are, this is here. We author ourselves as scholars who are seriously entertaining the notion of capacity building in order to build the canon of capacity building in the larger field. That's bold. That's self-authoring. But going a little deeper, in a world that oftentimes, unfortunately, is designed to squash and to belittle and in many cases destroy the thoughts of marginalized folk, self-authoring takes a very different kind of uh, tone and importance. Yeah, there's a whole, from the greatest examples were slave narratives. the greatest examples of self-authoring were the first slave narratives of folks who specifically had no formal education. People like Frederick Douglass, a narrative of a slave. And just think about that again, like that tension between belonging and becoming. Like, how do you belong to a society that is built to extract value from you? And then how do you become a citizen? But kind of coming back to the conversation here, that I'm just profoundly proud of us for kind of authoring ourselves into the field.
So I just want to say that I literally, when you were speaking before you said anything about self authoring, what I was writing down is how this has never been self help. So, like, even like these, when we're talking about capacity building, it's not self help at all. Like, it's distinctly different, which I'm sure also has very much a connection to what you're talking about when I think about like slave narratives. When I think about like alchemy of now, even like it's not a self help kind of thing. It is a way of building capacity to be more present with what is. And I think that that is what we do. And that's very different. Along the lines of McMindfulness, self-help is along those lines. So what we're doing is exactly not along those lines because of the way that it's so community oriented. Um, yeah, that's just really present for me right now as you were speaking about self-authoring. That's very intentional, very, very different than self-help. Very, very different.
But yeah, I think what I think I want to begin to conclude is one, a celebration of the richness of this experience, kind of letting folks know to look out for the different things that come out of this first season, and the ways in which we'll evolve this show into different kinds of show episodes or other kind of artifacts. I'm just excited to in a mature way, prop up this offering to the community. So again, thank you, Maria and Drew, for this work. I think the last point that I'll make around what this represents for us, it also shows how we've built capacity in terms of media production. Like, so like this represents a lot. Like, one, our capacity to produce a show, and then two, our capacity to build a field. Um, Sometimes they're not aligned, right? But the fact that we've been able to do that, it's a nice touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you're not being random. Like, there's this order, like, this is what I'm saying, like, random, just creating something to create it. Like, there's this way that for me, the podcast feels like a deep inquiry. But there's also like, we know things, right? Obviously, like, so I mean, it's not random, but it feels like a deep inquiry out loud, which to me is something to be celebrated, like living the questions and being willing to not just live them, but show people also how to live them or bring people on who are doing the same, which is what happened with, all of the amazing conversations you had with the luminaries that were a part of our summit.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Maria?
Yeah, you had said recently in one of our calls, it was a fellowship call that the three of us, you said, me, Maria, Drew, we do a lot of dense thinking. And I was tickled when you said that because this is the dense thinking that we do. And I think it's such a gift that we're able to do this together and now share it publicly. Share it publicly and um yeah, just putting it out there. I think that's really special.
Hmm.
There's there's one more thing I wanna say, and it's we can also edit this out, but I kinda wanna play with an idea with you 2 here, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Drew, when you were, like, going back to the conversation about the field, and you were talking about the field and how, there's no, like, original thoughts really, and we're all contributing to each other, and there's, um, wonderful work that's already out there, and we're weaving it, right? And then Angel, you were naming all of the frameworks like alchemy of now, archaeology of self, bridge shift thriving. And then what occurred to me was the field is it's so generative, and it's a missed opportunity if we don't also take that field into the marketplace
Mhm.
or see the field as a marketplace of exchanging value.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this you see that we were spending a lot of time on kind of theoretical metaphysical concepts, and then you kind of invite us more to the materiality of some of this stuff, meeting the marketplace. And I agree. I agree. And then lately I've been kind of a little playful with the marketplace and how we think about the marketplace. So yes, I agree. And then also, as we're thinking about how capacity building meets the marketplace, or how we kind of, provide experiences to the community that allow us to exchange value in the marketplace in relation to this, um, just a gentle invitation to slow down, you know, enough, because sometimes market logics tend to overwhelm and overrule. Um, and I'm victim of this too. As we're running a business, right? And there comes a moments where you're like obsessing over revenue, obsessing over the things that govern the market, you know, attention, marketing, clients, customers, promotion, strategic plans. And there's something about capacity building that transcends the market. Um, but still, so I agree. I agree. And I'm excited to see what we can produce, what can we produce? What can we contribute to the community that allows us to, in technical terms, make profit, from our ideas, and compete in the marketplace of ideas, right? So
Yeah.
definitely, I'm definitely down, definitely down, but also doing it in a way that, you know,
It's I mean, and that wasn't like a, "Hey, Angel, take us to the
yep,
market now.
yeah,
Create revenue from this now." But, like, when I was hearing the way, Drew, you were talking about it, and if we look at the marketplace as a way of relating as well, that's very important. That's
mhm,
very, very important. Not just a way of creating revenue, but as a place of relating and exchanging value, right? The field already is this marketplace where we're sharing ideas.
mhm,
We're sharing ideas, we're exchanging ideas, we're growing our ideas from other ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that you said that, I mean, of course, I've written a note on it already, but, like, I just wanna say that, like, I certainly prefer this to selling lipsticks, $50 lipstick. I mean, it's what I mean is there's more alignment for me, right? Because there would be all kinds of other thoughts going through my mind about the fact that this person's buying a $50 lipstick. You feel me? So like where I just feel like I'm very much like I so much prefer belonging to the record or the marketplace where people are healing centered, where people are experiencing self actualization, where people are regularly using language like fugitive, like there's just, you know, I'm very grateful for what I did before, but to be able to see this as a part of also sustaining our lives by this exchanging of value, like, and I mean value, like, what's yours? Oh, yeah, mine too. Emergence? Oh, okay. Like, to be able to see that that is actually life sustaining and, like, transforming for me, like, I feel like I'm selling the right thing. It doesn't even feel like selling. You feel me? It doesn't feel like so I don't have to convince anyone to wear this color
Yeah.
and to replenish it.
Listening, Drew speaking of her previous career as a makeup artist and kind of leader in the sales department at a major cosmetic company. Um, yeah, yeah, I think so. I one last thing around is here is when I studied abroad in Senegal, and African markets are like, whoa, you go to them. I mean, markets in general, even a farmer's market in the United States, but markets in general are profound. But in particular, African markets, there's this like wow, like this incredible dynamic experience, and you go to a stall and you're trying to get some kind of product or some, and you're engaging in conversation, and in Senegalese culture, there's you bargaining. It's called marchandage, um, and there's a relationship that's built, right? And also, like, if you're from the area and you constantly see the same kind of people, there is like this really beautiful web of relationships that are built across merchants and community members. So there is something beautiful to what you're suggesting, Maria, around taking this work and bringing it to the marketplace. What does it mean to take this work and create like a really robust, dynamic market where we're exchanging ideas, even if there's tension, in a good way, may that produce more and more fruitful dialogue and byproducts.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're naming there, so vividly is that markets are cultural. So I'm also thinking, how does the field shape the culture of the market? How does the field itself shape the culture of the market?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think season 2 is gonna be popping.
This is what happened. How does the field itself shape the cultural market? And when Angel was talking about Senegalese markets, I was thinking, right, like the most immediate reference I have is the luxury retail sector, stocks. But Maria, you took us straight out of that. Like, you're like, no, we're going to actually paradigm shift this. Right? Like, that's the thing, like, these words, how words, like, hold this, like, these associations, like and then Angel, you just took us to Senegal, and then Marie, you just took us back to, like, right, the field is doing something this doesn't have anything to even do with the markets as we conceive of them. There's so many more ways to conceive of them.
Mm.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so let's make sure we continue to just explore that in season 2 somehow. And yeah, any last thoughts? I mean, for me, it's just gratitude. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. Let's produce more shows with different themes. Let's expand this one. May this work continue to thrive.